This is Zestology, the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. Tony Wrighton here. New rules for energy and vitality, as I like to call it. And we're in festival season at the moment, for sure. I'm walking around the park in central London, and it has been a fantastic summer here in the UK. Plenty of time spent out of doors, plenty of time spent camping, plenty of time spent going to festivals as well. Although I do feel really sorry for my friends who were at Camp Festival over the last couple of weeks. It's basically been a heat wave for about 2 months. And then they all went off to Camp Festival, and the whole thing had to be cancelled because of high winds, loads of rain, mud and miserable weather for 2 days. And then on the Monday after it was cancelled, sun came back. So I do feel rather sorry for them. But in general, it's been a great festival summer. And in fact, it's been so good that as I walk around the park, the grass is not green anymore. It's just kind of brown and earthen. So yeah, it's been pretty special, and hardly any rain and lots of sun. And one of the most famous festivals in the world is coming up, Burning Man. And Burning Man on at the moment. And without being too worthy, we talk about Burning Man and festivals in today's podcast. I promise we're not too worthy, don't worry about it. But we do ask, what could one festival in the desert teach us about life? What can we learn from Stever Robbins, who's today's guest on Zestology? What can we learn from Stever Robbins' experiences of heading to the middle of nowhere to get copious amounts of dust in his face? How can we learn from that? Stever Robbins is a well-known productivity expert. He also happens to love Burning Man. And when I say love, he plans this thing for months in advance. He's known as the Get It Done guy. And it seems he's applied his Get It Done guy's skills to prepare for the world's most celebrated festival. He's also a well-known author, and it's good to talk to him about Burning Man on Zestology, because I was wondering, how does a productivity expert apply his professional skills to festival going, and shouldn't he just be focusing on having fun?
Oh my God, you actually want to know this?
I really want to know how you've used all your skills that you've built this successful business with, a successful author and entrepreneur, to prepare for Burning Man.
All right, you asked. Okay, first of all, so going to Burning Man, for people who don't know, this is held in the desert in Nevada in the United States, and it is one of the most inhospitable environments on the planet. So you have to bring everything. You have to bring your water, you have to bring everything you bring in, you also have to bring out with you. So not only do you have to bring everything you're going to need to survive for a week, but you need to bring the means to take all of that with you. And when I say all of it, I mean all of it. You can't even brush your teeth and spit on the ground. You have to spit in a bag and evaporate it. That's called
You're not allowed
water.
To spit on the ground at all.
No,
Wow,
that would be very, very severely disapproved of.
Yeah.
So there's a tremendous amount of stuff you do. So the skills that go into preparing for it, what I do is I create multiple little project plans. So I create a plan for all the stuff I'm going to need, like camping equipment, tent, all the stuff that I would say is a standard camping trip. And a lot of that is just a matter of getting some lists off of the internet or from people who've gone before and just collecting stuff. However, that's just the physical stuff you need. So now you need to think about how you're going to get everything out there. And that is complicated enough that in and of itself requires another project plan. Because once you've got all your stuff, at least in my case, I'm going to be flying 3,000 miles. I can't take all of this on a plane. So I have to have
where
it
do you
shipped
live?
out. I live in Boston.
In Boston? Oh, wow. So that's 3,000 miles to Burning Man. And
yeah.
I mean, all these project plans, it doesn't sound very free and easy, Burning Man, living in the moment, see what happens next. You've got plans left, right and centre. Is that in the spirit of Burning Man?
Well, the part that's in the spirit of Burning Man is you're not supposed to die while you're there. so to that extent,
yeah.
By the way, once I'm at Burning Man, I am free and easy like nobody's business.
Great. So it's plan to have no plan once you're there.
Exactly.
That's great.
There's a plan to have all of the infrastructure. But I'll tell you the thing that changed my life in terms of my organization skills. And this is going to sound weird, but and this is where the people without video are going to be sad because they can't see what I'm about to hold up. However, uh, because this is held in the desert, it's held in a particular salt flat,
Oh yeah.
which has got this dust that is so fine it sticks to everything, and it takes about a tenth of a second. So if you accidentally drop something on the ground, whatever you dropped will now be covered with dust forever because the dust does not come out. It's too fine. There's like no way to wash it out. So I had heard about this in advance, and what I decided to do was take every article of clothing and everything that I had that I wanted to protect and put them in individual Ziploc bags. And that I did that purely to keep them clean. But then what I discovered was, oh, I've got all these Ziploc bags. Why don't I take all of the Ziploc bags that have to do with, that have shirts in them, and I punch a little hole in the portion of the Ziploc bag that's outside of the seal, because
Yeah.
Ziplocs have this thick piece that's outside the seal. And then I put a carabiner through that. So now I have a bag in a Ziploc that can be hung by a carabiner. Then I take all of the carabiners that are shirts, and I just tie a loop of paracord and I thread them all on the paracord. And now this is my shirt closet. And because Ziploc bags are slippery, I have all of my stuff in a giant bin, and then I have a loop that's my shirts and has a tag that says shirts, and I have a loop that's my pants. I have a tag that says pants, and I have a loop that's my headgear, like my headlamp and my goggles, and that says utility. I simply grab that loop and pull it up. And because all of the Ziploc bags are slippery, they all just pull right out of the bin. And then it's like I'm holding a closet in front of me, and I can just leaf through the individual bags that are hanging by carabiners and pull the bag out that has the thing that I need in it, and then put it back in the bin.
Wow.
And it took me 2 years to really develop the system and get it working, but it is unbelievable how well it works.
Wow. I mean, it's totally extreme, but absolutely brilliant.
It is totally, yes. If you don't like being almost obsessive compulsive, don't be me.
But in terms of Burning Man, I think it's quite interesting because I think a lot of the most creative, spontaneous, certainly performers, sportsmen and women, and artists, people in so many different disciplines. There's a lot of meticulous preparation that goes into being spontaneous in a lot of areas of life. And it strikes me that this is a perfect example of that. A preparation to be spontaneous. Spontaneity you can't, in so many areas, you can't just be creatively spontaneous without preparing a little bit first.
Right. Well, in order to be spontaneous, you can only be spontaneous with whatever is at hand. So if you're out in a park, you can be as spontaneous as you want, but if it doesn't involve grass and trees, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot.
Yeah.
So in the case of something like Burning Man, where part of going to Burning Man is you're creating this intentional city literally in the middle of nowhere. Like there's nothing there the day you arrive except flat ground. And there's an entire city. And when I say city, that's not a metaphor. This is not like a campground that calls itself a city. This is actually the size of a real live city. And some people come and they set up barber shops. So last time I was there, I got a barber thing where they did the towel on my face, and he didn't use a straight razor. He used a disposable Bic razor, but for presumably for hygiene reasons. But there are bicycle repair shops. Although they're not shops because there's no commerce. It's just people set up these functions.
It's all like you give people stuff and they give you stuff. It's a giving economy, right?
Yes, but it's not a barter economy, which is a distinction a lot of people don't make. You are free to give whatever you want, but not expect anything in return. Now, what happens, of course, it's a natural human instinct when we're given something to want to give something in return.
Reciprocity. Reciprocity. Yeah.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Yeah.
But it sounds much better with your accent than with mine.
I think I've seen that word written down a few times, but I don't think I've ever heard it said, and therefore I appreciate that you said it. You've taught me to say it in the proper way.
Hey, hopefully I leave everybody more competent than when they met me.
Yeah, well, don't go around Burning Man correcting everyone's grammar, but you can do it with me, and I'd love that.
What happens at Burning Man stays at Burning Man.
Oh, right. Wow.
It's an environment where people really stretch themselves in many, many ways. People will show up and decide they are different people. An interesting NLP story, actually, from Burning Man. There were, and I'm going to have to make this anonymized somewhat because I don't have permission to share the story. But somebody went to Burning Man, a person who had mediocre social skills and was kind of, schlumpy, and he
Schlumpy.
create schlumpy,
Yeah,
yes, which I guess is,
that's good. Yeah,
yeah, I don't know how else to put it. He's schlumpy,
yeah.
and he created a character which was just a play acting character for him, of a highly confident, vibrant, like performer type person, sequined jackets and like, hey, here I am, it's Mr. Cool. Now this was a character for him. This was an art project that he did, normally being Mr. Schlumpy Boy. And he got back from Burning Man, and was reflecting on it and thought that people had reacted really well to his Mr. Cool character. So one day he was walking down the street and he decided, what if I just walk down the street and mentally put myself into the Mr. Cool headspace? So he did. And suddenly people in his life began responding to him as Mr. Cool, not Mr. Schlumpy Boy. So now he has $1 million a year practice teaching other people to be Mr. Cool,
Wow.
basically. And
That's
and
really
this
cool. That's pure. I mean, it's pretty pure NLP that as well, isn't it? Yeah, faking it until you make it, I suppose.
fake it until you make it, and and then in his case, figure out how you did it and and transfer it to other people.
And there is
But
definitely something that it's almost like the chicken and the egg with body language as well, isn't it? I mean, non-verbal communication, certainly if your shoulders are slumped and your head is down and you're kind of exhibiting signs of either shyness or negativity or sadness, that's going to make you feel a certain way as well. And if you sit up straight and you put your shoulders back and you put your chin up just a little bit and maybe just a little bit of a smile or not, you might be kind of a little bit more kind of alpha, kind of stern. That makes you feel a certain way as well, doesn't it? I mean, it's amazing how one works to affect the other.
I love that you recognize that I'm such an alpha male. That makes me feel good.
Steve, at the moment we started talking, I was like, this guy is an alpha.
Yeah, it's, I hide it very, very well. But
the preparation for Burning Man, this is very exciting. I mean, how many times have you been to Burning Man?
So I've been to Firefly, which is the local regional burn in the Northeast, about 10 times. And I've been to Burning Man, the big burn, twice. This will be my third time this year.
Okay. And was it, I mean, I've always wanted to go and have never been. And I've done plenty of research online and I've been to lots of festivals in this country, which are great, but not quite Burning Man. And it seems like when you first go to Burning Man, you're kind of a virgin burner, sort of a bit intimidating. Do people slightly look down on you as a kind of a newbie when you first get there?
No, that wasn't my experience at all. Well, actually, let me qualify that. If you're a jerk, yes. So Burning Man runs according to something called the 10 principles, which are the 10 principles of how the community developed that were completely organic. Now, this is important because these are not principles they said this is how we want the festival to be. This is what developed naturally. And then they codified it about 10 years ago and said, hey, these are the 10 principles of the burn. If you read the 10 principles and then go and look at the social psychology literature, it just so happens that the 10 principles of Burning Man also correspond to the conditions under which people experience a tremendous amount of psychological satisfaction, connection, community, and bonding. They didn't do that explicitly, and in fact, as far as I know, I've never heard anyone but me make that connection. But if you look at the 10 principles, so for example, one of them is called radical self-reliance, which is essentially you take responsibility for your own shit, and you do not expect anyone to come and save you. You don't expect anybody to do favors. You don't go, hey, get me that thing. You are responsible 100% for your experience. And if you don't prepare and you show up and you don't have enough water, that's on you. It's not on anyone else. And saying, oh, no one told me. Well, guess what? You should have read the website. The ticket itself says, like, if you actually look at the Burning Man ticket, on the back of it is this giant release that says basically you can die out here. This is not a safe environment, and we don't have a Department of Public Safety. Make sure you know what you're getting into and get into it. So you have radical self-reliance, which gives people a tremendous feeling of ownership over their experience and a tremendous feeling of ownership over your life and autonomy, which we all love, right? I mean, that's one of the things that makes people feel great is autonomy and a sense of control, et cetera, et cetera. Now, combine that with another one of the principles, which is civic engagement. and community, which is you're expected to show up and be radically self-reliant and at the same time help the community prosper. And humans, like it or not, and I know there's a lot of this myth about, oh, people are self-made. No one who lives in the 20th and 21st century is self-made. I'm sorry. It has never happened. Once we invented industrialization and indoor plumbing, there has been no more self-made people ever. So at Burning Man, you show up, you're radically self-reliant, you're committed to the community, and then it's also a gifting economy, which is you give with no expectation of return, which we know from the reciprocity principle means that other people will then want to gift to you with no expectation of return. And this is how it's different from barter, and they've actually found this in MRI machines. When you barter or when you engage in an economic transaction, it does not activate the feelings of community and in-group. However, when you gift, and the reciprocity principle kicks in and people gift back, that does activate feelings of community and in-group. So the Burning Man 10 principles ends up creating a community that is bizarrely tight. And it's like, if you're willing to go to the effort to get yourself out there into this desert, just driving from the highway, the nearest highway, you eventually have to turn off the highway and you literally just go driving off into the desert, and there's not a road there. They've marked it off with orange cones so you know where to drive, but it's not paved. It's not even unpaved. It's just you're driving across the dirt.
Wow.
And the drive from the highway to the gate takes about like an hour and a half, something like that.
Yeah.
If you're, and that's just the very last part of the journey. You're already three hours away from the nearest city by the time you turn off the highway. If you're willing to go to that kind of trouble, of course we're going to accept you, or at least we're going to accept you until you prove to be a jerk, at which point we're going to say, this is a very dangerous desert. You wouldn't want to accidentally get lost in a dust storm forever now, would you?
So it sounds like you've learnt, in terms of your business and in terms of being someone who's an expert and has written books on productivity, sounds like you've actually learnt a lot from this experience that at first sight might not seem to be that closely linked to your core business, but actually has got so many principles that are fundamental to self-improvement, productivity, getting more done, and being more effective in life.
Yes, and by the way, I want to be explicit about something you just said. Excuse me. Although I am an expert in productivity, I don't consider productivity to be inherently valuable. To me, what I consider to be inherently valuable is having a life that is fulfilling and meaningful and fun and that you love. And in some areas of life, being more productive will make your life more fulfilling, more meaningful, more fun, etc. But I am not a proponent of productivity unless it leads you to the life that you want. And I'm always clear about that.
That's good. That's a good reframe.
Yeah, for me, the end goal is always having an extraordinary life. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen my presentation on that, go to my website, which is steverrobbins.com /
Is that your TED talk?
It was a TEDx talk, yes, and the video got screwed up, so it didn't make it onto the TEDx website. Oh, I'm not even going to go there. You think that with all this NLP and all the things I know that I would be unflappable. No, I am far from unflappable. And
so what happened? You did the TEDx talk, and then they videoed it, and it didn't work.
I did the TEDx talk, and they videoed it, and afterwards I came to them and I said, because I had planned my entire year around being able to make it to this. I had to travel to a different city and back in one day just to give this talk. You know what? I'm not going to tell the whole story, but at the end of the day, apparently when I got up in front of the group, there was a problem with the sound of my mic. And the cameraman, who was a volunteer, decided rather than go through because the scheduling was really tight, he decided rather than go through the effort to try to figure out what was wrong with my mic and get me remiked, he would just turn the camera off since the audio wouldn't work anyway.
Oh, no.
Now, he lied about this. This was the thing that made it worse, is when I tried to find out where the video was, they made up all kinds of stories and excuses.
Oh, Stever, I feel like you're going through this whole pain and anger again.
I am. I mean, I being in America, you'll notice the assault rifle, laying across my couch. Kidding, people, kidding. I'm not actually a gun owner, but
what a trauma. So you've had to learn some radical self-acceptance as radical self-reliance after that.
But in any event, so that's really what I'm after, is the living an extraordinary life. And the reason that Burning Man was became like a gateway to so much, is I went there, and by every objective measure, I should have hated it. I don't like the heat. I don't like being dirty. There are no showers there. And if there are, it doesn't matter because there actually was one I got into. And by the time I had walked back to my tent, I was covered with dust again. I don't like being dirty. I don't like being hot. I don't like having to prepare my own meals. I don't like walking around in the desert. There's like nothing about it that I like. And I came back going, that was the most amazing experience of my life. I want to go back again. And then when I went back the second time, it was last year. It was the hottest year on record. It was 110 degrees. This is not an exaggeration.
Goodness.
110 degrees in the shade. We measured it. Inside people's tents, if they did not have a shade structure, we had one measurement that got up to 130. So this is so hot. For most days, I couldn't even do anything in the peak of the day except lay underneath a shade structure and just, drink Gatorade. So by all objective measures, I should have hated it more. And as we were driving out, the friend I was driving with said, now we're going to go and finally get to shower in a hotel. And I said, actually, I kind of want to stay. Yeah. He's like, you mean you want to come back next year? I'm like, no, actually, I don't even want to leave. He's like, we've been here 12 days. Mm-hmm. You mean he's like, I'm ready to go. And my friend has been going for 15 years. And I was like, and weirdly, I'm not. Mm. And so when I got home, I really started reflecting. Clearly, what I'm enjoying about the experience is not the heat and the dust and the self-reliance and the need to put up a tent that took me 10 hours to put up because we had some poles that were the wrong length and stuff. Like all of that stuff I didn't enjoy, but yet it seemed to be an essential part of the experience. Yeah. Like when I thought because I hated it at the time. I had my own little nervous breakdown and yelled and screamed and got all frustrated. And I realized, and I don't think I'm ever going to like that part, by the way, but it is a piece that goes into the experience, which ended up, and again, to go back to our social psychology principles, when you have a dramatic and physically demanding and difficult initiation ritual, it triggers extra high levels of devotion. And I was just, and when I started making this connection, I thought, wait a minute, even though I can't point to any one thing about this experience that made it so wonderful, when I stop and consider the 10 principles, when I consider the physical hardship, and when I match that against what I know about social psychology, these are actually all of the conditions that human beings were made to thrive under.
Right, yes.
Most of these conditions we've actually eliminated from our day-to-day lives. We have automated them out of existence. We have buried them. We have regimented our lives in ways that no longer give us the sort of free-flowing ability to kind of be who we are when we want to be, etc. And I realized Burning Man, and yes, it seems to require a $350 million economy in order to support Burning Man. Let's be really clear about that. But once you get there, it is an environment that if you allow yourself to, become part of it, that really does tap a lot of the things that human beings evolved to be optimally happy under. And I was like, worked for me.
Just interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by Dr. Stephen Simpson and I's course, iwanttounplug.com. If you'd like to access deeper states of focus, productivity and creativity, then you head to iwanttounplug.com. That's iwanttounplug.com and start to use the skills of neuro-linguistic programming to unplug effectively and feel that focus, productivity and creativity. So if you fancy learning a little bit more about NLP, taking the course, using some relaxation challenges and meditations in there as well, then you can head to iwanttounplug.com and remember, use the code Zestology for 30% off. That is it. Back to the show. I wonder, it's certainly getting outside one's comfort zone is something that during it, I had a chance to reflect on this recently. We did this 3 peaks challenge where you climb up the tallest peak in Wales, and then England, and then Scotland, and you do it all in 24 hours. So you're almost running up and down each one, and then you get back to the minibus, and they're like, "Come on, quick! You got to get in. We've only got 24 hours." And then you drive into the next one. It's 5 hours in a cramped minibus with 13 other kind of sweaty, smelly fellas. And then you get out, and you're like, "Come on, 1 o'clock in the morning. Put your head torch on." And I can't say that I massively enjoyed any of it, especially the going uphill, because we were just going so quickly. I kept trying to figure out ways to have like a 10-second break, and there was just no breaks at all. And yet afterwards, the sense of kind of satisfaction and reward and community, because I'd done it with my mates, and kind of getting outside one's comfort zone and pride at having done something I wasn't sure if I could do. that was really special. So I do think that kind of when you get outside your comfort zone, you're not sure if you can do something, and then you do it. That's quite powerful, isn't it?
Yes, and if you get outside your comfort zone and you're not sure you can do something and you can't do it, that can also be quite powerful, just not necessarily in the same direction.
Well, that's true, and not all of us, there were 13 of us who started it, and only 11 did all the 3 peaks. But the other two gave it a go.
Yeah, so last year at Burning Man, they have a Thunderdome. If you've ever seen the movie Mad Max and the Thunderdome from the 1980s.
No, but I have heard about the Thunderdome at Burning Man, so tell me more.
It's just a giant geodesic dome made out of metal poles.
Yeah.
And it is modeled after the movie. So if you've seen the movie, you'll totally understand what I'm talking about. But if you want to fight somebody, they have these giant bungee cords dropping down from the top of the geodesic dome, and you get into a harness at the bottom of the bungee cord. They give you these foam rubber bats, and then they have all these people standing around in heavy metal, post-apocalyptic costumes.
Wow.
And, they have like maybe a flaming torch, and they go, "Let the battle begin," and you go after each other, and, you whack each other. And people climb up on the outside of this dome, and they're cheering. And it really looks like a scene out of Mad Max. It's pretty awesome.
Wow.
So I was at the Thunderdome and like cheering on these two people who were just totally whacking each other with these foam rubber bats. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move. And I was like, in the sky. And I was like, wait, what's that? And I looked up, and I looked up at the sky, and there were 12 dots of light that were just kind of moving, but they were moving rather rapidly. So they clearly weren't stars or satellites. They were something else. Then suddenly I saw jets of flame start to shoot out of a couple of them. And I realized these were 9 parasailers who were steering themselves using flamethrowers. And I am sitting here clinging to the Thunderdome with this loud heavy metal music playing at 10,000 decibels, and these flaming torches and people going at it, and then on the right hand side, about 30 feet away, there are these parasailers who start spiraling down out of the sky using flamethrowers to steer, coming in for a landing on a little improvised landing strip right next to the Thunderdome. And I'm sitting here with flaming parasailers on one side, and heavy metal music and elaborate pageantry and the Thunderdome on the left, and just going, this is not a movie, neither is this an amusement park. This is actually just happening.
Yeah.
And it's all real in the sense that, like, it's not like they're actors. Like, okay, there's these two people who want to work out a grudge match, in the Thunderdome, and they're actually going at it. And these are parasailers who just want to go parasailing with flamethrowers. Not my cup of tea, but their cup of tea. And I was just like watching this going, okay, I can describe this to people, but there is no description that will actually let you know what it feels like to be there. And to know that it's not like a circus. It's not like a big elaborate choreographed show. It's that these are just all these people doing the cool stuff they want to do all at once in one place. And their idea of what cool stuff is really excellent, even if I personally am never going to get onto a parasail with a flamethrower, or at least I'm currently not planning on it.
Well, who knows?
It's really
By the end
cool.
of this year's Burning Man, we might see you parasailing with a flamethrower yourself. And in terms of what do you think the biggest learning has been from Burning Man? Is it some of those 10 principles? Is it something that you've kind of? I think what you spoke about in terms of community, I'm interested to know how we can apply that to our lives, because it always seems to me we're thinking about potentially moving house at the moment. Not sure, but the thing I'm more important about than anything else is being near existing mates and having a potential community of new mates as well. It's just so important, isn't it?
Yes. And because Burning Man takes place essentially in a camping type environment where everyone has tents and things, you're in a neighborhood in a way that you aren't in day-to-day society. And it's, everywhere you're walking around, there are people. And the culture is also such that you can just walk up and talk to anyone. So the cultural norms are, because remember, no one's going to ask you for money, and no one's going to try to sell you anything. So the only kinds of connections that are going to happen are either connections of like, hey, why are you walking in front of me without a light? Or hopefully the more pleasant, like, hey, you're walking in front of me without a light. I have a spare one. Here, why don't you put this on? And then someone isn't going to accidentally hit you with the bicycle. So, if you wanted to translate those into real life, I would say, first of all, find ways to make sure that you will randomly be in the physical proximity of other people. If you get really, really rich, don't buy a 45-room mansion on 6,000 acres of private land. That's stupid. Buy something in the middle of a city that's full of the kinds of people that you want to hang out with, and make sure that you have things set up in such a way that you encounter those people. Second, give people stuff for free, expecting nothing back. Just go around and be generous. It will make people uncomfortable. They will relieve that uncomfort by being generous with you. And, yada, yada, yada. And perhaps at some point you'll end up with new friends from that.
Yeah.
If you're moving to a new place, that's always also a fun time to just step outside your comfort zone. Do something or adopt a behavior or try something that you would never have tried because, people know that I'm not the kind of person who does X, Y, Z. Well, go to the new place and get an orange mohawk and wear tie-dye and see what happens. It's a time that you can reinvent yourself without having the social pressure of people knowing who you are.
I feel very inspired. I'm going straight out to get the mohawk after this as well.
I hope so. I mean, this has been one of my quandaries about Burning Man is I just want all of my friends to go, my friends who I didn't meet there, that is, except that also I'm not so sure I want the pressure of having people who know me in the so-called default world to know me there, because when I'm at Burning Man, I kind of like the freedom to decide I'm going to be really different from the way that I am in my daily life. And, I may say different things or do different things or approach people and interact in different ways. And I'm not so sure that I want, business associates to see me with a mohawk and body paint. And maybe that's all I'm wearing is a mohawk and body paint.
Maybe, because, we all have different elements. We all act differently around different people. For example, the way that you speak to your mother is different to the way that you speak to your lover or to the way that you speak to your boss. So maybe, playing devil's advocate, that's your problem. And, ultimately, if you were able to be like that and to be free and easy to adopt different roles and different personas or just enjoy different things in life when you come home, that'd be brilliant.
Oh no, that part I have no problem with. It's I don't want my boss to go to Burning Man and then encounter me with me wearing nothing but body paint and a mohawk, unless my boss is prepared to do that. In which case, I've told.
And again, if your boss does make the effort to go there, then maybe that would be cool. You guys could have a big body paint mohawk off.
Yes. I actually had a friend, a social friend of mine, come to Firefly, our regional burn, this year, and he is a close relative of some people who know me from a very different context. And I had a conversation with him beforehand, and I said, let us remember what happens at Firefly stays at Firefly.
Yeah.
And when we're hanging out with these other people, let's not discuss those things. And I won't discuss what you do, you don't discuss what I do. And as far as they're concerned, I wear khakis and a powder blue t-shirt every day and have short hair and whatever. And they don't ever need to know anything about the body paint and the mohawk.
Amazing.
And we had that agreement and we had a fabulous time.
Yeah. So now, Steven, something I've asked everyone on this podcast is, what is one book you'd recommend and one tip for living with more energy, vitality and motivation? I already feel very inspired by chatting to you, but what is one book and one tip that you would come up with?
I'm going to give you two books, one of them about self-improvement, one of them about understanding the world. The book about self-improvement would be the book Loving What Is by Byron Katie, which it's presented as spirituality. Forget spirituality. Just think of it as a psychological technique. Byron Katie I believe she stumbled on the brain mechanism that causes people to form and dissolve beliefs. And she has been able to codify it, and it is wonderful, and it is probably the single best self-help thing I have ever experienced. It's for self-help, it surpasses NLP. NLP is great for dealing with other people and for certain things, but I have found Loving What Is to be superior to NLP in terms of doing stuff to help me with my own personal chill-outedness.
That's really great. And just to interrupt on that, I've heard Byron Katie's name being mentioned many times, and I haven't read her work, but I'm kind of keen to, and perhaps you've given me the nudge that I need. But I kind of agree with you in NLP, and I do think there are elements of NLP that when there's a really deep work to be done, really deep work, I think there are other modalities that work as well.
Yeah.
If not better.
If you wanted to have an NLP conversation about it, actually, I could tell you where I believe the model falls short, but that's but anyway, so loving what is a big one. And I will say to people, don't read the book, do the book, because this is one of those things that if you read it and go, oh, I understand that, it doesn't matter. It's not about understanding. It is do these steps, do this practice. It's simple but not easy, because you have to be willing to really look at yourself in some ways where you might reveal things about yourself that you don't want to deal with. But that's okay, because the process, if you actually do that and complete the process, you'll be fine at the end of it. It's amazing. So Loving What Is by Byron Katie for self-improvement. For understanding the world, there is a book called Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows, Donella Meadows. And I'd have to go back and reread it, which I haven't done for a while, to know for sure how accessible it is, like to a layperson audience. But it is a book about how the world is a more complicated place than we're taught that it is in terms of how we understand it. And it goes through some of the subtleties in how you need to be able to think to be able to understand, for example, good policymaking. Because a lot of policies do exactly the wrong thing over time. They cause a short-term fix and a long-term decline in the very thing they're trying to fix. And this book explains some of the reasons why. So those are the books.
Yeah.
And as far as a tip, my tip, and you were talking about energy and vitality and zest, because this is Zestology. My tip would be methodical about your friendships and relationships. And when I say methodical, I mean methodical. Like I do a daily check-in exercise with an accountability buddy every day where we rate ourselves on things that we're trying to achieve and habits that we want to form. And one of the things that every single day I check in on is, this week, have I organized at least 3 social events reaching out to people that I don't normally see. And before I started doing this check-in, I would go for days without seeing my friends, just because I'd be busy with family or projects or whatever. Since doing this check-in, every week I remember, okay, got to reach out to 3 friends. And it's been a fabulous discipline, and it is not yet a habit. I still have to remind myself, because I go away for a week, and when I come back, I forget. I need to.
That's great. That's really good.
So
it's an accountability buddy. An accountability buddy?
Accountability buddy.
Accountability buddy. That's great. I've never heard that, and that's certainly never come up on this podcast. That's a really good one,
It comes from The Office, actually.
Does it? Well, not just
Yes.
not just the word, but actually, the whole idea behind that tip that you've just given. I really like that. And I think it is really important, and it ties in with what we've been saying. I didn't think we were going to talk about Burning Man for the whole podcast, but we have, and it ties in with the whole theme of community as well, doesn't it? Really nurturing your community.
So, am I allowed to talk about my products and services here?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
That was the final question. Where can people find you? And tell us everything about what you're doing. Where can people find you and all your work and your books and everything else?
Sure. Well, at the moment, I am it's actually very interesting, because until this conversation, I never made the connection with Burning Man. But now I have. I started something, and I started it to help myself, called Get It Done Groups. And you can find them at getitdonegroups.com. And what they are, it is an intentional community of people who serve as each other's bosses. So when you're self-employed, it's very easy to go off track. It's easy to get stalled. It's easy to put off the things that you don't want to do. So what we do is we all act as each other's accountability buddies. And we do it to help each other keep moving with long-term projects, medium-term projects, short-term projects, and then all the way down to hour by hour. The reason that we had to start today at 5 minutes after the hour is today is what I call a do-it day. Every hour on the hour, this group gets together and we all check in with each other to make sure that we're making progress on whatever our goals for today are. Yeah. And I created this mainly as an accountability system to help make sure that I could do the things I kept putting off. But what has happened is because there's so much of all of us being accountable for each other, that we've really, like, we form a community as well. And, we know what everyone's dealing with, and we're like, hey, you go. One of our people is just about to set off across the country. Her project for this cycle of the Get It Done group, her project is to move to a different coast and divorce her husband and start a new life. Nice. And she's actually doing it. And today is the day that she's picking up the rental van and getting in the rental van and heading off.
Presumably her husband isn't part of the group.
You go, girl. It's an amicable
okay, cool.
situation. So they're actually driving out to the other coast together.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. Wow, I've really enjoyed this, Stever. That's very cool, and certainly accountability, and the more public that you make your goals, public commitments, just works so well, doesn't it? So was that noise that I just heard a couple of moments ago, was that your reminder to check in every hour?
That is exactly what that was.
Is it really? Yeah. So you set an alarm every hour, you've got to speak to everyone else?
Yep, we get together on a video conference so that anyone who's at a computer, at least, we can see each other. Everyone else dials in by phone, and we only spend about 3 minutes at the top of the hour. But in those 3 minutes, everyone goes around and says, "Here's what I'm working on. Here's what I did last hour. Here's what I plan to do next hour," and it turns out it's an extraordinarily powerful format for keeping moving. That's very cool. That's getitdonegroups.com, and then I personally am at steverrobbins.com. And then, just because we've been talking about weird stuff, I also co-wrote a musical about personal productivity, and we created a 5-minute video promoting it. If you would like to see a 5-minute musical rendition of 3 of the tips, of the productivity tips from my book, delivered by 2 professional musical theater actors, go to worklessanddomore.com. And at the top of the page, there is a video link. Click on the video link, and you will get to see a little 5-minute promo for the musical that contains 3 tips and 3 songs sung by professional musical theater actors.
Stever, you are a man full of hidden surprises. From start to finish, this has been a podcast of surprises. And when is Burning Man?
Burning Man is the week before Labor Day, which I guess is an American holiday, but we're arriving on August 23rd, I believe.
Okay, so I want to put this out that week or the week before, so we'll do that.
Awesome.
Listen, have a great time. You've already started packing for it, and this is like a month before.
Well, because we have to get everything put on a railway car and shipped out there, and the timing of the train schedules is such that the only railway car that we could get leaves on August 5th. So even though Burning Man is until 3 weeks later, we've got to have everything packed and on the boxcar.
Wow.
By then. And you know what? I've got to run because I have to check in 12 seconds.
Okay, get it done, guys. It's great to talk to you. Well, if that hasn't made you want to up sticks and go and pitch your tent or park a camper van in the middle of nowhere for a week and get your face paints out, then nothing will. Thank you for listening to Zestology. As always, thank you to Stever Robbins as well. And if you're at Burning Man or going or planning to go at some point in the future, I hope it's just kind of whetted your appetite a little bit. As always, I'll be back next week with another podcast. And before that, you might want to head to my website and the new page that I've put together with some of my favourite Zestology hacks. So it's just the stuff that's worked for me. I've interviewed, over 150 people now on this podcast. Well over that, about 180 on this podcast. And I've been told a lot of stuff which is pretty good. And I've put the best of the productivity hacks, the purchases, the products, the meditation techniques, the stuff that works for me in terms of having more energy and motivation. I've put it all on one page, and that is tonywrighton.com/hacks. Now, it's just what works for me, but I've got a feeling that some of it might be good for you as well, because I feel like I've tested it all fairly comprehensively. tonywrighton.com/hacks. Hope that works for you. Let me know what you think, and see you next time.